Rust in Peace by Megadeth is the greatest thrash metal of all time. I know it's a bold claim, but I will stand by it. I remember the first time hearing Holy War's The Punishment, being completely blown away with all the technical changes, the transitions, and how the song included this Middle Eastern guitar melody and the transitions to the next part of the song. I saw my original CD from 1990. I'm glad I still have it. I've heard the 2004 version doesn't really sound very good, but I just don't have the original jewel case because that got lost. But I still have the booklet and I have the CD, so that's pretty cool. So let's talk more about this album. This album is flawless. It has technical precision, political fury, and sheer musical ambition. It was the album that both saved the band and took them to new heights. But the story of Rust in Peace is more than just killer riffs and blistering solos. It's a tale of near self-destruction, lineup changes, personal redemption, and the relentless drive of Dave Mustaine to prove himself to the world. To understand Rust in Peace, we have to go back to the chaos of the late 1980s. By 1988, Megadeth had already made a name for themselves as one of thrash metal's most dangerous bands. Their first two albums, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, and Peace Sells But Who's Buying, showcased razor-sharp riffs and politically charged lyrics that set them apart from their peers. But success brought excess. The recording of the third album, So Far So Good So What, was a nightmare of drug abuse and internal tension. I like that album, So Far So Good So What. It was the first one I bought as a new release, and then I bought this one 2 years later, but I've always liked that album. But let me continue with the story. So back in 1988, frontman David Mustaine and bassist David Ellison were really spiraling into heavy substance abuse. There was this constant turnover of guitarists and drummers, and the band was completely unstable. Although So Far So Good So What sold well and had classic songs like In My Darkest Hour, which is actually maybe one of my favorite Megadeth songs of all time, the album didn't really have the precision of their earlier work. I know critics noticed, fans noticed, and even Dave Mustaine himself said Megadeth could do better. So now it's 1989. The band was on the verge of a collapse. Members Jeff Young on guitar and Chuck Baylor on drums were fired, and that left Dave Mustaine and David Ellison to rebuild Megadeth from the ground up. The pressure was immense. Thrash metal was reaching its peak, with Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax all releasing landmark albums. For Dave Mustaine, who had been fired from Metallica years earlier, he needed to prove himself, and he was still pretty pissed off because of getting fired. So Rust in Peace would have to be nothing but perfect. The first step was finding musicians who could match Mustaine's vision. He needed a guitarist who could not only play his intricate riffs, but also challenge him creatively. After auditioning several players, Mustaine finally found his match in Marty Friedman. Marty Friedman had already built a reputation in the metal underground with his work in Cacophony, a band known for its neoclassical shredding and technical fireworks. His unique blend of exotic scales and melodic phrasing brought a new sophistication to Megadeth's sound. For the drum set, Mustaine recruited Nick Menza, who had been working as Megadeth's drum tech. Menza's powerful, precise style gave the band the rhythmic foundation it desperately needed. With Mustaine on guitar and vocals, Ellison on bass, and Friedman on lead guitar and Menza on drums, Megadeth finally had a stable and incredibly talented lineup. Fans will come to know this as the classic Rust in Peace lineup, the one that many still consider definitive. And in my opinion, they stayed together throughout most of the 90s, but I think they were the best lineup of all time for this band. But to continue the story, even with this new lineup in place, the road to Rust in Peace was anything but smooth. Mustaine and Ellison were still struggling with drug addiction, and that made writing and rehearsing difficult. At one point, Dave Mustaine entered rehab, and he left after a few days, and he wanted to get clean on his own. The pressure of competing with Metallica, because they had just released Injustice for All, so that really weighed on him. He wanted to make a better album, and he just wanted to make this perfect album that was just flawless, and I think he did. Between the drugs and all the other problems going on, they had lots of problems, but this band, or this lineup, had this really good chemistry, and that's why this album is so great. So basically, Mustaine later recalled, for the first time, he felt like everyone in the band was on the same page musically. Marty Friedman's lead work pushed Dave Mustaine to raise his own game, while Nick Menza's drumming gave the songs a new level of complexity, but slowly the music for Rest in Peace began to take shape. Here's some interesting trivia. I didn't know this, but I found it out during my research, that the album's title came from a bumper sticker that Dave Mustaine saw while driving, which said, "May all your nuclear weapons rust in peace." It was a perfect fit for Megadeth's politically charged style. The Cold War was still a major source of anxiety in 1990. Nuclear annihilation was a constant threat. Songs like Holy Wars of Punishment Due and Rust in Peace, Polaris reflected Mustaine's fears of a global conflict, religious extremism, and government corruption. Holy Wars in particular is a masterpiece of thrash composition, inspired by the conflict in Northern Ireland and the hypocrisy of religious violence. Song moves through multiple sections, blazing speed riffs, melodic breakdowns, technical solos, without ever losing momentum. It remains one of the greatest opening tracks in metal history. Another standout, Hangar 18, plays with conspiracy theories about UFOs and government cover-ups. With its intricate dual guitar harmonies and jaw-dropping solos, it became a fan favorite and a staple of Megadeth's live shows. Tracks like Tornado Souls, which features one of Marty Friedman's most iconic guitar solos, and the apocalyptic Rust in Peace, Polaris, further showcasing the band's technical abilities and political edge. In early 1990, Megadeth entered Rumbo Recorders in Los Angeles to begin tracking what would become their defining album. Initially, producer Mike Klink, famous for his work with Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, was brought in to oversee the sessions. Klink helped organize the early tracking, but as the recording progressed, it became clear that the project needed a more detail-oriented touch to capture the band's intricate arrangements. That's when engineer Max Norman, who had previously worked with Ozzy Osbourne, was brought in to help complete the album. Norman's meticulous ear and hands-on approach were exactly what Rust in Peace required. He focused on tightening performances, sculpting the razor-sharp guitar tones, and ensuring that every riff, drum fill, and bass line came through with crystal clarity. His ability to balance thrash aggression with a clean, powerful mix gave the record its signature sound. Ferocious yet articulate, thanks to Norman's production skills, Marty Friedman's exotic solos sliced through the mix with surgical precision. Nick Menza's drumming snapped with machine-like accuracy, and David Ellefson's bass added both melody and muscle. Unlike previous Megadeth albums, which often suffered from chaotic production, Rust in Peace benefited from this disciplined, collaborative effort. When Rust in Peace was released on September 24th, 1990, the reaction was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Critics hailed it as Megadeth's best album to date, praising its intricate compositions and sharp political commentary. Fans were blown away by the technical precision and ferocity of the music. Songs like Holy Wars, Hangar 18, Tornado Souls, these all became staples of Megadeth's live set and remain fan favorites to this day. Commercially, the album was a breakthrough. It was certified platinum in the United States. It earned a Grammy nomination for Best Metal Performance, helping Megadeth reach a wider audience without compromising their aggressive sound. For many fans, Rust in Peace represents the perfect balance of speed, melody, and complexity, a high watermark that few thrash albums have matched. Over 3 decades later, Rust in Peace remains one of the most influential albums in metal history. The combination of technical mastery and political urgency set a new standard for thrash. Guitarists still study Marty Friedman's solos, while drummers marvel at Nick Menza's precision. Bands across the metal spectrum, from technical death metal to progressive metal, cite the album as a major influence. For Dave Mustaine, Rust in Peace was more than just a musical achievement. It was proof he could overcome addiction, lineup instability, and personal demons to create something timeless. After years of being overshadowed by Metallica, he had finally delivered an album that stood toe-to-toe with his former bandmates' best work. In many ways, Rust in Peace was the album that secured Megadeth's place as one of the big four of thrash metal. The classic lineup of Mustaine, Ellefson, Friedman, and Menza would go on to record other great albums, including Countdown to Extinction and Euthanasia. Many fans still view Rust in Peace as their crowning achievement. It captures a moment when everything clicked, a perfect storm of talent, ambition, and raw energy. Now, why is Rust in Peace so often hailed as the pinnacle of thrash metal? First, it was the technical precision. Every riff, solo, drum pattern is executed with surgical accuracy, setting a new standard for musicianship in heavy metal. Second, the songwriting depth. Tracks like Holy Wars, Tornado Souls combine blistering speed with complex arrangements and dynamic shifts, proving thrash could be both ferocious and sophisticated. Third, iconic performances. Marty Friedman's exotic guitar solos, Nick Menza's inventive drumming, and David Ellefson's bass work all created a soundscape that remains unmatched decades later. And fourth, possibly and most importantly, is the production quality. Thanks to Max Norman's crystal clear mix, the album balances raw aggression with pristine clarity, allowing every instrument to shine without losing intensity. And finally, this album has a lasting influence. Rust in Peace inspired countless metal musicians and continues to be studied by guitarists and drummers alike, shaping the evolution of both thrash and technical metal. These five elements, precision, songwriting, musicianship, production, and influence, combine to make Rust in Peace more than just a great record. It stands as a definitive statement of what thrash metal can achieve when ambition and execution meet in perfect harmony. Do you think Rust in Peace is the greatest thrash metal album of all time, or do you have another favorite that tops it? Which track from this record blows you away the most? Is it Holy Wars, Tornado Souls, or a deep cut like Five Magics? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your opinions in the comments. If you want to even deeper dive into some history, check out my video on why Dimebag Darrell almost joined Megadeth around this very time. It's a pretty cool story. I did it on my video talking about Pantera's Cowboys, but that was kind of like a subplot of this video, so you can watch that there. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button, share the video with your fellow metalheads, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the greatest albums in rock and metal. Your support keeps these stories alive and lets me keep bringing you more content. See you in the next one.